The officer's choice. 8 pistols that defined the face of war and became silent witnesses of an era. I often catch myself thinking that history isn't just about dates, battles, and generals' names. It's also about material evidence, objects that hold on to fingerprints, the smell of gunpowder, and the silent whispers of those who held them. And in my opinion, nothing serves as such a personal artifact of an era as an officer's pistol. This isn't just a weapon. It's the final argument, a symbol of authority, a tool for making fateful decisions, and sometimes the only companion in one's final minutes. When I started researching this topic, I realized that each of these 8 pistols isn't just a piece of cold steel. It's a character. It's a philosophy. It's a reflection of the country that produced it and the war it was destined to fight in. Picture this for a second. The autumn of 1939. Europe is holding its breath. In a few weeks, the world will plunge into a hell that will last for 6 long years. And in this pre-storm silence, officers in different corners of the continent are checking their weapons. Some have the ornate Luger, others the reliable Colt, and yet others have the newly issued VS from the factory in Rodom. They don't know what awaits them yet. But their pistols have already become symbols of the era that is about to begin. It is these symbols we will talk about. This won't be just a ranking. This will be our shared attempt to understand what stood behind these legends. Let's go. Number 8. VS-35 Rodom, Poland. The tragedy of an underestimated genius. When I, unfortunately, only in my mind, handle information about the VS, I'm always overcome with a feeling of bitter regret. This was, without exaggeration, one of the best pistols of its time. And its history is a perfect metaphor for the fate of Poland itself in those terrible years. Historical and economic context. The birth of a phoenix. After the First World War, Poland, reborn from the ashes, desperately needed modern, standardized weapons for its army. Before that, it was a real hodgepodge of Austrian, German, and Russian systems. They needed their own national pistol, a symbol of a new, strong Poland. And it appeared. The factory in Rodom became the place where engineering thought reached incredible heights. The developers, Piotr Wilniaksik and Jan Skrzypinski, didn't reinvent the wheel. They took the brilliant John Browning's design from the Colt M1911 as a base, the short recoil, swinging link system. It was a proven and incredibly reliable solution. But they improved it. They added a frame-mounted safety, which was more convenient and made disassembly even easier. And all of this was for the powerful and widespread 9 by 19mm Parabellum cartridge. Imagine the economic situation. A young country with an unestablished industry creates a product that, in terms of finished quality and reliability, not only catches up with, but, in some parameters, surpasses German models. The VS was made with incredible, I'd say German-like pedantry. Every part was perfectly fitted. This was a weapon any officer could be proud of. My analysis and reflections. Why didn't it become mass-produced? The source text says its flaw was in quantity. But let me dig deeper. Why were there so few? Because Poland was the first victim of the Blitzkrieg. The factory in Rodom simply didn't have time to ramp up production to the necessary volumes. Its tragedy isn't that it was bad, but that it wasn't given the time to reveal its full potential. And then an even darker chapter began. The Germans, having captured the factory, continued production of the VS. But what was this production like? That's a separate, heartbreaking story. The Germans forced Poles to work for them. Quality, according to some reports, gradually declined as the occupiers demanded quantity. The pistol, created to defend Poland's sovereignty, was now being produced for the enemy. It was marked with ugly German stamps over the Polish eagles. Is that not a symbol of the entire occupation? Why is it in 8th place? It's here not because it's bad, but because its historical impact was less than that of the other contenders. It didn't have time to influence the course of combat like the Colt or the TT did. This is the what-if pistol. What if Poland had held out? What if hundreds of thousands had been produced? We'll never know. The VS-35 is an elegant, lethal, but alas, underestimated aristocrat whose career was cut short by history itself. It's like that brilliant poet who died in his first battle, never having written his masterpiece. Number 7. Nambu Type 14, Japan. The samurai's weapon in a war of motors. If the VAS is a tragedy, then the Nambu is, forgive my bluntness, a pathology. Studying it, I feel a mix of curiosity and mild bewilderment. It's one of the most controversial pistols in history. Historical context: the spirit of Bushido in steel. Japan of the Meiji period and the early 20th century was a country in a painful but rapid leap from feudalism to the industrial era. They adopted Western technology but tried to stretch it over their own absolutely unique cultural code. The Nambu pistol, created by General Kijiro Nambu, is perfect proof of this. Externally, it resembles the German Luger, just as ornate with futuristic lines for its time. But the devil, as always, is in the details. Its 8 by 22 millimeters Nambu cartridge was frankly weak. Why? Well, here's my opinion, based on studying the mentality. For a Japanese officer, the pistol was not a primary weapon. It was a status symbol, like a samurai's katana. Its purpose wasn't to engage in prolonged firefights, but to perform ritual suicide, seppuku, or finish off a defeated enemy. A Japanese officer went into an attack with a sword. The pistol was an auxiliary tool. Economic analysis, technological isolation. The economy of the Japanese Empire was geared for war, but it faced colossal difficulties with resources and complex technologies. The Nambu was expensive to produce. Its parts required hand-fitting. It was finicky, sensitive to dirt. Imagine the mud and sand of the Pacific jungles or the Manchurian steppes. What happened to this art house mechanism? That's right, it failed. My reflections: beauty or life. When I read reports from American Marines who encounter the Nambu in battle, they speak of it with derision. They're reliable, crude Colts won in terms of utility and reliability. The Nambu Type 14 is a prime example of ideology and aesthetics taking precedence over practicality. It was created for a parade ground, ideal war, but collided with the harsh reality where there's no place for ceremonies in a trench. This is a pistol that psychologically lost the Second World War before it even began, because its creators didn't understand that the war of the future was a war of attrition, dirt, and mass production. Is it beautiful? Undoubtedly. But in a trench, beauty doesn't save lives. Number 6. Browning High Power, Belgium/Great Britain. The prophet from the future. Now, let's abruptly change the record. If the Nambu is the past, then the Browning High Power, or GP35, is the veritable future. When I think about this pistol, one word comes to mind: revolution. Historical background: the legacy of a genius. John Moses Browning is the greatest firearms designer in history. Fact. But his most amazing trait was his gift of foresight. While all the world's armies were content with pistols holding 7 or 8 rounds in the magazine, Browning understood rate of fire and ammunition capacity would be decisive. His final creation was the high power. He died in 1926 before he could perfect it, but the Belgian company FN brilliantly finished his work. And in 1935, the world saw a marvel: a pistol with a magazine holding 13 rounds of 9 by 19 millimeters. That was almost double the capacity of its competitors. Imagine the psychological advantage of an officer who knows he has 13 chances in his holster, not 8. This changed the tactics of close combat. Economics and geopolitics, the weapon of the free world. The FN factory in Herstal, Belgium, was captured by the Germans in 1940. And what did they do? They didn't break it. They realized they had captured a gold mine. The Germans set up production of the high power for their elite units, particularly the Waffen-SS, under the designation Pistol 640B. A unique situation arose. The same pistol was used by both Hitler's SS and British commandos and resistance fighters. It was truly international. My analysis: the perfect balance. What's the genius of the high power? It found that golden mean all designers seek. Powerful, but not excessive like the .45 caliber Colt. High capacity, yet surprisingly ergonomic. It fits the hand like a glove. accurate and yet not finicky like the Luger. This was the first universal soldier pistol. It worked everywhere, in the snowy Norwegian fjords, the dusty North Africa, the damp forests of France. It wasn't a symbol of one nation. It was a symbol of efficiency. This is a pistol that simply did its job and did it brilliantly. It didn't announce itself like the Luger. It simply allowed its owner to survive. And that is its greatest merit. Number 5, Beretta M 1934, Italy. Here are small deeds. Moving on to the Beretta M 1934, I always smile. This weapon has its own special charm. If the high power is a Swiss Army knife, the Beretta is an elegant Italian stiletto. Historical and cultural context, the Mediterranean character. Mussolini's Italy was a country of paradoxes. On one hand, imperial ambitions, dreams of a new Rome. On the other, limited resources and not the strongest industry. The army needed a mass-produced, cheap, but reliable officer's pistol. And the Beretta M 1934 fit this niche perfectly. But just look at it. It's one of the most elegant pistols of that war. Smooth contours, open barrel, graceful grip. It looks not like a grim tool of death, but like an item of luxury. And that's very Italian. Even in war, style above all. Economic calculation, pragmatism, and efficiency. It used a .380 ACP 9 by 17 millimeters cartridge. This isn't the most powerful round. It's often criticized for this. But I see it differently. Who was this pistol intended for? For officers who were primarily commanding units. Their task wasn't to storm trenches, but to coordinate actions. They needed a pistol for self-defense in a critical situation. Light, compact, it could always be carried. It wasn't a hindrance. It was very reliable and had phenomenal ergonomics. My reflections, a weapon for life. The Beretta M 1934 is a pistol that understood its owner wanted to live. It wasn't created for a heroic last stand. It was created to give an officer a few seconds, in case of danger, to retreat, hide, survive. It perfectly reflected the character of the Mediterranean theater of war, maneuverable, often chaotic, where skirmishes were fleeting. This is a weapon of tactical survival, not total destruction. And in its niche, it was almost perfect. When I look at it, I see not the ambitions of Il Duce, but the pragmatism of the Italian soldier who knows the value of life and prefers to live to fight another day. Number 4. Luger P08, Germany. The aristocrat on the battlefield. Here we approach one of the most recognizable symbols of the 20th century. The Luger P08. Say the name, and the image of a German officer in a cap with a Totenkopf, a black holster, and an ornate pistol with a curved grip immediately comes to mind. This wasn't just a pistol. It was a brand. Historical analysis, from the Kaiser to the Führer. The Luger was a child of Kaiser's Germany, the peak of its engineering thought. Its toggle lock mechanism was incredibly precise and incredibly complex. It had many small parts, required meticulous maintenance, and feared dirt. It was like a mechanical watch, beautiful when working, but finicky if mishandled. By the start of the Second World War, it was already morally obsolete. Its production was too expensive and lengthy. So why did it remain in service? The answer is prestige. The Luger was a status symbol. It was carried by high-ranking officers, flying aces, tank crews. It was a sign of belonging to the elite. Capturing one as a trophy was the dream of any soldier in the Allied forces. It was valued above any other weapon. Economics, an impractical luxury. From an economic standpoint, continuing P08 production in wartime was madness. It required too much machine time, skilled labor, and materials. Germany, preparing for total war, understood this. That's precisely why the Walther P38 was created, to replace the capricious aristocrat with a simple, reliable workhorse. My reflections, the last gasp of old Europe. When I study the Luger, I see in it not just a weapon. I see the spirit of old, aristocratic Europe, which burned out in the trenches of the First World War, but smoldered for another 2 decades. The war fought by a soldier with a Luger in 1914 was a war with certain rules. with marching upright, with cavalry charges. The War of 1941 was a war of motors, steel, mass bombings, and total destruction. The Luger in this new war looked like an outsider. It was an artifact of a bygone era, beautiful but doomed. Its accuracy and balance are admirable, but its capriciousness reminds us of a simple truth. In war, it's not the most elegant that survives, but the most adaptable. Number 3, TT-33 USSR. The embodiment of Stalinist functionality. The Soviet Tokarev. If the Luger is an aristocrat, the TT is a grim Chekist in a leather jacket. No frills, no beauty, only functionality taken to the absolute. Historical and economic context. Industrialization in steel. The young Soviet Union, surrounded by enemies, had no time for beauty. It needed to arm a multi-million-strong army with a simple, cheap, powerful, and technologically advanced weapon. The task was titanic. Fyodor Tokarev solved it brilliantly. He, like the Poles, used the Browning design from the Colt 1911 as a base. But he simplified it to the extreme. The lack of a safety catch is a brilliant and controversial decision. It reduced the number of parts and manufacturing time. The 7.62 by 25 mm cartridge was a modification of the Mauser cartridge. It was very powerful, with a high muzzle velocity and excellent penetration. This was ideal for urban combat. Economic analysis. The price of victory. The TT was a weapon that could be produced by the millions in not the most advanced factories, by not always highly qualified workers. Its simplicity was its main asset. It was like the Soviet T-34 tank. Not the most comfortable, not the most beautiful, but mass-produced, reparable, and made precisely for the conditions it was meant to fight in: mud, frost, dust. My reflections. The philosophy of direct action. When I think of the TT, the word point comes to mind. Atip. It was created for one thing: to thrust into the very heart of battle. Its heavy trigger pull, piercing report, recoil, all of it said one thing: I am here to destroy. This wasn't a pistol for duels or ceremonies. It was a tool for close combat, where decisions are made in split seconds. Its lack of a safety is a philosophy. It's a weapon of constant readiness. The owner of a TT had to be disciplined and aware of his responsibility. This is a pistol that didn't forgive mistakes, but also didn't fail at the most crucial moment. In its conciseness lies the whole essence of that terrible and great era it lived through. Number 2, Colt M1911, USA. The voice of America. Here it is, the legend, the icon. The Colt M1911. If I had to describe it in one word, it would be persuasive. Historical background. The answer from the Philippines. Its story began even before the First World War, during the conflicts in the Philippines. American soldiers encountered fanatical insurgents whom even several hits from a .38 caliber revolver wouldn't stop. A weapon with greater stopping power was needed. And once again, John Browning enters the scene. His .45 ACP automatic Colt pistol cartridge became the benchmark. A bullet weighing 15 grams, flying at subsonic speed, didn't so much penetrate as it stopped, knocking all will to resist out of an opponent. Economics and psychology. The phenomenon of longevity. The M1911 went through 2 world wars, Korea, Vietnam, and is still in service with some units today. Why? Because it created something more than just a pistol. It created trust. A soldier armed with a Colt knew one accurate shot, and the threat would be neutralized. This gave incredible psychological confidence. Yes, it had a small magazine, only 7 rounds. Yes, it was heavy and had noticeable recoil, but it didn't matter. Every shot was an event. It was an argument that didn't require repetition. Its simple and reliable design worked in any conditions. American industry stamped them out by the millions, and each copy was as reliable as the last. My reflections, the embodiment of American power. When I look at the M1911, I see in it a reflection of the American approach to war: directness, power, technological reliability, and a certain brutality. It's not an elegant weapon for aesthetes. It's a sledgehammer. And for many problems in war, it turned out to be the right tool. It didn't try to be universal. It was the best at its main quality, instantly stopping an opponent. And in this, it had no equal. This is a pistol that saved lives, instilling confidence in those who had to go into battle with it. It was more than a weapon. It was a friend. Number 1. Walther P-38, Germany. The new god of war. And here we are at the finish line. Why is it that the Walther P-38 becomes number 1, and not the legendary Colt, not the Colt Luger? The answer is simple, because it was the most perfect pistol of the Second World War. Not the most powerful, not the most beautiful, not the highest capacity, but the most perfect as an engineering product, historical and technological breakthrough, the sunset of one era and the dawn of another. The P-38 was a direct response to the Luger's shortcomings. The Germans, despite their love for tradition, were pragmatists. They understood the war would be total, and weapons had to be technologically advanced, cheap for mass production, and failure-proof. The P-38 became that weapon. Its main innovation was the double-action trigger mechanism. This was a revolution. An officer could carry the pistol with a round in the chamber in complete safety. And for the first shot, he didn't need to cock the hammer. Just draw from the holster and pull the trigger. This saved precious seconds in close combat. This was a real breakthrough. Economic analysis. The triumph of rationality. The P-38 was designed with mass production in mind. Stamped parts, simplified construction, high reparability. It was as reliable as the TT, but safer and more ergonomic. It was powerful enough, the same 9x19mm as the Luger, but not afraid of dirt. It became the workhorse for millions of Wehrmacht soldiers, from generals to truck drivers. My reflections. The prototype of the modern service pistol. When I study the P-38, I see in it the prototype of all modern service pistols. Look at the American M9, Beretta 92, which is its direct descendant. The concept embedded in the P-38, double action, safety, reliability, magazine capacity, became the standard for NATO and the entire world. The P-38 is a pistol that rejected the past and stepped into the future. It wasn't a symbol like the Luger. It was the essence. It was the embodiment of the German war machine. Rational, effective, lethal, and devoid of sentiment. It didn't inspire awe. It worked. And it worked flawlessly. That is precisely why it deserves first place in this ranking. It didn't just fight. It defined a path that small arms would take for decades to come. Epilogue: what was left out? Our journey has come to an end. We've traveled from the tragic Polish VES to the revolutionary German P-38. Each of these 8 pistols is not just a piece of metal. It's frozen history, cast in steel. It's the fates of people, engineering genius, economic capabilities, and the philosophy of entire nations. They remind us that war is not only about strategies and maps, but also about personal courage, cold calculation, and the weight of a weapon in your hand at the decisive moment. Folks, that was our shared time machine. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. But our conversation doesn't end here. I have a big request for you. First, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Here, we will continue to break down the most interesting topics in history, technology, and human destinies. And second, and this is the most important thing, write in the comments. What do you think? Was I right to put the Walther P-38 in first place? And which pistol is number 1 in your personal ranking? Maybe you think the Colt deserved the top spot? Or did your grandfather or great-grandfather fight with one of these pistols? And do you have your own family story connected to it? Share your opinion. Let's have a big discussion, because it's your thoughts and stories that make our community truly alive. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. See you in the next videos, and of course in the comments.